Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's Appraisal Buzzcast. I'm Jim Morrison. With me, as always, is our host, Hal Humphreys. Hey, Hal, how are you doing?
Hello, Jim. How are you today?
I'm absolutely fabulous. We have an exciting episode today. We're speaking with Kevin Hecht, the Appraisal Training and Development Manager and Real Estate Economist for Mckissock. Let's bring him in. Hey, Kevin.
Hey, guys.
How's Kevin doing today?
I am living the dream, Hal.
I love it. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us. You've been on the Buzzcast before. You and I've spoken here on the Buzzcast before, but for those that just don't pay attention sometimes, tell our listeners a little bit about your background in this industry. How did you get sucked into the appraisal world?
And I did get sucked in. Well, first of all, thanks for having me back. So my appraisal career began in 1987 when I went to work for my dad. I really had no intention of getting in the appraisal business, right? I was an economics major in college, and that's kind of what I thought I was going to do. But I didn't have a job when I got home from college. So Dad said, why don't you do this for a little while? And that was 37 years ago, give or take. So I started as an independent fee appraiser, worked for my dad for a number of years. Then I got a chance to go to work for a local bank here in St. Louis as a staff appraiser. Then I went to work for a large national bank first as a staff appraiser. Then I worked as a manager, and then I worked on the appraisal process side, and then ended up in appraisal education. So I teach classes. I work with our instructors here at Mckissock. I develop classes and blogs and webinars. But I also do a lot on the economic side. So I'm also an adjunct professor of economics because I'm really passionate about helping appraisers understand how economics applies to what we do. And I don't think appraisers recognize or realize that as an appraiser, you're really an economist. And that's something we need to be aware of. So I love talking about economics. I love talking about how it affects what we do and some of the things that we should look at as appraisers.
I was chatting with someone earlier this morning about some highest and best use conversations that are going on around the country. And the quote from Grass Camp came into my head of, real estate appraisal is the bastard child of feasibility analysis. and feasibility involves a study of economic factors that impact whether or not something makes sense to do. And that's what highest and best use is. So I love the fact that you talk about appraisers need to think of themselves as analysts who consider economic factors. It's critical to what we do. Well, Kevin, thanks again for being here. Let me do this. I'm going to take a real quick break, and we're going to hear from one of our commercial sponsors, and we will be right back.
The Dictionary of Real Estate Appraisal, 7th edition, is a landmark text that reflects the depth and breadth of appraisal knowledge. Each entry, definition, and reference has been painstakingly researched and designed to reflect an expert understanding of issues that currently impact the profession. The new dictionary is an essential authoritative resource for all appraisers. The dictionary is divided into two sections, an alphabetical listing of terms directly related to real estate appraisal and an addendum with topical glossaries and compilations of terms used by related real estate professionals. Find it at appraisalinstitute.org/dictionary7.
Welcome back, everybody. You're listening to the Appraisal Buzz. I'm Hal Humphreys, your host. I'm joined today by my friend Kevin Hecht. Kevin is an economist and an instructor with Mckissock. Kevin, thank you again for being here. You know, it seems like the market is starting to pick up. I'm hearing from friends across the country that as spring is springing, things are starting to happen around the country. But we haven't seen any significant interest rate changes. You know, I have some ideas that the interest rate is going to do what the interest rate is going to do, and people still have to move. They still have to make decisions. So maybe they held off because they thought, well, we're going to get a lower interest rate soon, but maybe they're realizing that ain't going to happen anytime real soon. So let's go ahead and make that move or make that decision. Can we talk about what appraisers can expect from the market in the near future?
Well, I think, if we look at what's going on, as you mentioned, interest rates are the key, right? And I think the higher for longer scenario seems to be playing out. I think everybody expected in the June Fed meeting that we were going to see a decrease in rates. And then we got the inflation news, which said, hey, inflation's a little higher than we thought. So I don't expect to see a rate cut in June. But to your point, I think the general market is picking up, typical spring market, but it's not going to be where we would normally see it in the sense that, we're still seeing inventory issues in a lot of markets. People are still kind of sitting on the sidelines, and then you still have that whole group of people who have those 2 and 3% interest rates who are thinking, I'm not going to move right now. It doesn't make any sense. So we still face those challenges. But I will point out that, everything is local. One of the things we know about real estate is location, location, location. So you have to be aware of what's going on in your market specifically, because not every market is going to react the same way.
Yeah, and I live in Nashville, Tennessee, which is one of those spots that during the 2008 troubles, it didn't really affect Nashville that bad, even with the slowdown after the COVID boom this past round. Home prices are so high, people are still trading. There's stuff going on, but like you said, in different parts of the country, people are reacting differently. I think it is imperative that we as appraisers pay attention to the interest rate hikes or drops. We pay attention to what the Fed is doing, because it can have a very real impact on how we conduct our business going forward. Any other thoughts on the future of the market coming up?
Well, again, I think inventory is the big question mark. And to your point, I live in St. Louis, and we didn't see the same swings that some of the other markets saw. I think the Midwest kind of, I won't say was unscathed, but wasn't that bad. I think one of the things that is, I don't know if it's positive, but I think we're seeing a stability in prices as interest rates kind of settle in. And so that makes the process, I think, a little bit easier for most appraisers, but it's still important to look at your market conditions and be able to explain them. Because one of the things we keep hearing is that underwriters, users of appraisals are asking for more and more information in their reports because they want to be able to understand what's going on as well.
Yeah, and the idea of market adjustments for marketing conditions and what's going on out there in the real world, Fannie Mae has been very clear. They want to see why you made an adjustment. They want to see why you didn't make an adjustment. They want to know what you know about your market. So I think that's a really good point, Kevin. Let's do this. I'm going to take a real quick break, and we'll be right back.
Need a profitable PDC solution for your clients? Jaro's appraisal management software makes the process faster and easier. With Jaro, you can order standard appraisals, inspections, and hybrids, all on one seamless platform. The software also gives you everything you need to manage new vendors by taking care of background checks and letting you shop from a pre-vetted panel of inspectors with a wide range of credentials. Get started with Jaro today at tryjaro, that's tryjaro.com.
Welcome back, everybody. You're listening to the Appraisal Buzz. I'm Hal Humphreys, your host, and I'm joined today by Kevin Hecht from Mckissock. Kevin, we've talked about interest rates. We talked about kind of the global economy picture and the way appraisers need to think about the economy. I'm going to move on to the next topic, which I think is one of my favorite topics, and that is Valuation Expo coming up in August. Now, we've saddled you with quite a bit of responsibility at Val Expo. You're teaching the 7-hour USPAP update on Monday, August 19th. Mckissock is a platinum sponsor. You're also presenting on supporting adjustments panel to finish up our conference on the 21st. Appraisers that are attending both can get up to 21 hours of CE. Let me ask you this, Kevin. What are you most looking forward to at Val Expo this year?
Well, honestly, the thing I'm looking most forward to is being with other appraisers. I think one of the great things about these conferences is just getting to talk to other appraisers, especially from different markets. And I think you can learn a lot. And that's really what I think, we hope to, in our panel, be able to provide appraisers with things to think about. Not everybody does things the same way, and that's okay. But understanding different options and different ways to look at problems is one of the best things I think you can take away from some of these conferences and the interaction you have with other people.
I have said it from day one, and much like you, my father was an appraiser. He roped me into the business, said, hey, try this out for a while, and here I am 30 some odd years later. Every time, and look, I'm going to be honest, when I was a young appraiser out there making money, I didn't really enjoy going to conferences. I didn't really see the point until I got there. And I spent time with fellow appraisers from around the country and learned how other people are doing things, learned how, what they thought about a certain specific topic that we were talking about in our office. Like, it's really useful to spend time with other appraisers and bounce ideas off. Because, I mean, Kevin, look, you did fee appraisal, you were working for your dad. I did the same thing. How many times did you sit at your office, think about a thing, agree with yourself, and send it out the door without having anybody, check it, look
Yep.
at it?
Yep. Yeah. And I think one of the other things when we talk about, so I always talk about this in classes that I teach, right? Especially when we're teaching on Zoom. We have appraisers from all over the country. And while here in St. Louis, we're a pretty conservative market, right? We don't see the swings that somebody on the coast might see. But understanding how they look at an appraisal problem may not be directly related to what I do, but it can help me look at my problems from a different perspective. And I think one of the things that we need to emphasize, and I hope nobody's doing this, but I did hear a story recently, that laminated piece of paper that you got when you started that said a 2-bathroom versus a 1-bathroom is $2,000 adjustment, those days are gone. And if anybody's still using that, and I do have a story about that where somebody sent that into the state as part of their experience credits. We need to get way past, we should be way past that, right? And that's something I think we need to think about.
And, kind of look, the working theme for Val Expo this year is embracing your superpower. And I look, we've leaned into this theme wholeheartedly. There's going to be a little bit of a cheese factor to it, but I think the appraisers that I know across the country are smart, talented analysts that really do want to do exceptional work. And this brings us back to, you just mentioned supporting adjustments. We talked in the last segment about the GSEs are looking for us to show our work on things. I don't want to give too much away about your presentation, but you know what? Why has supporting adjustments been such a sticking point for the GSEs? And what should appraisers make sure they're doing to properly support their adjustments and report that support?
Yeah, I think it all comes down to what you said, show your work. I think for so long, we've been accustomed just making our adjustments and thinking everybody's going to take our word for it because we're the professional. But we know with all the changes that are going on in the industry and all the things that are happening in the market, it's never been more important to be able to support your work. And so we think about all the technology that we have available to us today, all the different programs that are out there, AI, all that stuff. We can use that in our appraisal process. And we can use those things to help us support our adjustments and to provide a better supported, better explained report. And as you mentioned, the GSEs are incredibly focused, I think, right now on making sure appraisers are showing their work. It's something we're supposed to have been doing all along, but there's a bigger emphasis on it right now, I think.
I know that you, like me, spend a lot of time on Facebook interacting with people because it's such a productive space to spend time with people. I've noticed a couple of times people in some Facebook groups for appraisers talking about, if they want me to show my work, they're going to have to pay me more money. I've said it's in the file. I'm supposed to summarize. Here's the thing. If it's in the file, why not put it in the report?
Exactly.
If you've done the work, show it. It's really simple. And Kevin, you mentioned, the software that's available to help appraisers get their head around these things. Scott Cullen with Solomon Adjustments had put together years ago an amazing tool that allows appraisers to use depreciated costs to come up with support for adjustments. Aloft has the appraiser's toolkit where it does a very similar thing. It allows you to use depreciated costs to support adjustments. That's not the only way to support adjustments, but it is a tool, and they are available to us as appraisers.
Yeah. And I think, one of the things appraisers need to be aware of are these tools and how to incorporate them. Somebody said recently, if you're still doing an appraisal the way you did it 20 years ago, you're probably not doing it right. If you're doing it the way you did it 10 years ago, you're probably not doing it right. If you did it 5 years ago, because the only thing we know about appraisal is the only constant is change. And as appraisers, we need to keep up with that change. And why not use these tools if they're helpful? Now, I will caution as a use PEP instructor, and you know this too, Hal, you still have to understand what you're doing. You can't just take it for granted, but why not use those tools? Why not leverage that information to help you in your support?
Look, There's Spark, there's Gandysoft, there's several statistical tools that appraisers can avail themselves of. What Kevin said is critical. Don't just run a bunch of random sales through a statistical thing, spit out a number, and use that. You have to understand basic statistics in order to report that in a meaningful way. But look, we as appraisers, if you're going to do the work, if you're going to do the math, the GSEs want to see the math. Let's give them that. It doesn't take that much extra time if you've actually done the work to then report that in a meaningful fashion.
And the way that the software works today, a lot of it's incorporated already. So, putting it in there. The other thing I will caution about, and I've seen this in a lot of appraisals, even our MLS will do provide us with some pretty charts and graphs and things that'll dress up our appraisal. But make sure if you put that in there, it doesn't contradict something else that you've written somewhere else in the report. I see too many appraisers just, again, copy and pasting things into the report, thinking that, hey, now it's pretty. Now there's a lot of information. There's more pages. Nobody's going to question me. And yet all you're doing is creating another problem for yourself.
Charging by the pound and putting marking stable in on page 1, stable market conditions, and then you've got this graph that goes from here all the way up to here in the back of the report. I mean, that can be a problem for you as an appraiser. So yes, absolutely pay attention to the details. Look, I like a pretty appraisal report. I'm going to say I've never heard anyone use that phrase before, but I like an attractive appraisal report, something that looks professional, looks good. But the more important thing, aside from lipstick and rouge, aside from window dressing, is, does it make logical sense? Does it have a flow? And if you use good, solid economic theory and good, solid, highest, best use analysis to get to your answer, you're going to be fine.
Yeah, we're way past the days of form filling, right? Appraisers can't just fill in the form.
Yeah.
And that's where we separate ourselves from just the automated valuation models and things like that. So
yes,
I think it's critical for appraisers to take that next step and make sure they're providing that information, that support. And you brought up a good point earlier when you said you also sometimes have to explain what you didn't do.
Yeah.
Because too often we think we just have to talk about what we did do, but sometimes it's just as important to say what we didn't do so the reader of the report understands what happened.
Yes, no doubt. Kevin, thank you again for being here. I've had such a good time chatting with you. I cannot wait to see you this weekend and then again at Val Expo at the end of the summer. I'm really tickled about that. Jim Morrison, do we by chance have an anonymous appraiser question that Kevin and I can attempt to answer?
Absolutely. So our listeners can reach out to us at comments@appraisalbuzz.com if they have any, or join us on the Appraisal Buzz forum on Facebook if they want an immediate feedback from some of our other members. But this question is, what is the best way to determine land value when there are no land sales? County gives no value and the subject is a townhouse. Any advice, please?
I saw an appraiser one time cite a land value, and in his certification, he said significant professional assistance was provided by the county tax assessor in determining the land value. I don't think that's the way to do
it. Well, I would default to my laminated sheet that said it's 20% of the value of the property, right? That's kind of what it used to be. That's a tough one, right? I mean, we talk about all the data we have, but sometimes we don't have the data that we need. And so then you have to take those extra steps. And again, that's where the analysis is important. Maybe depending on what you could do the allocation method or the extraction method and go through the process of pulling that land value out of the bigger picture, out of the whole thing.
Yeah. I mean, look, I'm a fan of saying a lot of things in the appraisal space, a lot of things in the insurance space, a lot of things in the criminal justice space even. These are areas that I work in. A lot of things come down to a math problem, right? Mm-hmm. You just do the math and see what the answer is. And this is one of those cases where you're going to have, if there are no sales available, if the county has no indication of what the land value is because they just don't want to, and I can't understand why they wouldn't, but whatever. Yeah. figure up what it costs to build the thing, figure out what the entrepreneurial profit is, find out how much is left over. Consider those things. Allocation, extraction, either one, both and.
Yeah. Yeah. And, that's a good
Or,
point. Never limit yourself by saying, I'm only going to do this, right? Because sometimes there are other methods and maybe you do both and you come up with a range and you figure, okay, this makes more sense here than here or here. So a big fan
yeah.
of, again, going through the process.
Yeah, and look here, Kevin and I were kind of knocking about this question before the podcast, and he had the idea, and I kind of agreed with him. Just don't take the assignment, pick something else.
That was the first thought. But I will say, and I think you know this too, and we talk about this all the time. I mean, one of the things appraisers need to take those challenging assignments. We need to expand our skills. We need to take on those ones that take a little bit of extra effort. Now, again, I realize that, from a fee basis, we need to charge what we're worth. And maybe you have to add something to that, but don't back away from the tough assignments, basically.
Kevin, the tough assignments make us better appraisers. They make us
Yes, they do.
stop and think and work our way through problems. And quite honestly, I'm 55 this year. I've been doing this for 30 plus years. I don't find much joy in doing cookie cutter assignments that don't require me to think much. I do find joy in doing the one-off weird ones that take me some extra time. Now, look, yes, bid accordingly. And
Right.
you may not get some of them, but if you get the chance to work on something that's oddball or weird, tie into it, call a friend, get yourself competent if you're not. There are ways to do this. So anyway, Kevin, I think we have thoroughly muddied the waters on answering that question. The guy's probably going to surrender his license and move on to some other form of employment after our answer. But Kevin, thank you so much for being here today. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Jim Morrison, do we have anything else to cover today?
Yeah, if anybody wants to see Kevin speak in person, go to valuationexpo.com. You can register for his USPAP class. You can also register for Valuation Expo. If you want to just do the trade show and USPAP, you can get your 7 hours. If you want to do the whole thing, it's 21. So we really are looking forward to seeing you. And Kevin, you always do such a great job speaking. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Thanks, Hal.
Thank you. Well, if we have nothing else for Jim Morrison and Kevin Hecht, I'm Hal Humphreys, and that is your Appraisal Buzzcast.